So when we say that we might see wavering voice usage, like that's a good thing, because even a voice AI call costs you something. And if your product came with a sticker that prevented you from calling because it told you how to do something, well, that's just a good thing, and it's a better user experience, right?
Hello and welcome to another episode of Deep Learning with PolyAI, the only podcast where half of the host and guest combination is suffering the consequences of U.S. over-the-counter pharmaceuticals. Nikola, how are you feeling today?
What a ringing endorsement. Yeah, no, we were just talking about, I think I've had too much decongestant at this point. I feel like, I've done something to my voice that sounds irreparable, but we'll see. How are you doing?
No better time than to get you on a podcast, is to make you talk for the next 15 minutes or so about a topic of my choice and surprising you with it. I'm doing okay, but you are back in the UK now, is that correct?
I'm back in the UK, yeah.
All right, cool. Anyway, well, I'm sure while you were here, you heard some rumblings in the news about politics. We're not going to have a political conversation today, but we are going to talk about something that overlaps with what we do here at PolyAI, which was a story that I believe Axios broke a couple of weeks ago, talking about the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, the Elon Musk-led entity that's been going through and allegedly slashing inefficiencies across the government, right? One of those high-profile things was the toll-free number for the Social Security Administration that serves 70 million individuals here in the United States was on the chopping block. It's been walked back since, but sort of a lot of alarms went off when it came to probably what we argue is one of the most accessible and intuitive channels for communication. Let's just talk about that. Why, in the name of efficiency, if they're staying true to their name, why is this a terrible idea had they moved forward with removing a toll-free number for a government service?
Yeah, I mean, this is a story that repeats nonstop across the world, right? Another famous example is the UK's HMRC line, where, I think once or twice a year they announce that it's going away and then they roll it back really quickly. I think the issue is you do math locally and you say, okay, I don't have that channel, hence they save that much money, and people will just figure it out on their own. They'll read stuff online, they'll do this or that, and then someone goes and reads something misconstrued or reads the wrong source of information or an outdated piece of information, and they start filing things the wrong way or booking things the wrong way, and thus creating things that downstream create operational cost that is way higher.
Yeah.
And it just causes catastrophic service delivery issues, right? And, you can't account for them. And, I think if you're taking a broad stroke and just trying to do things quickly, sometimes it's impossible to account for it even when you do the best job you can. And I don't think it was really done here. It was just I'm going to cut that, see you later. Well,
right.
Are you really? And, it's kind of you do it just to see who screams, and if they scream loud enough. And, maybe it's a valid way to shake up government if you think about it, right? You try 10 things, you get pushback that is valid on 8, you roll them back, but 2 go through. And maybe that's okay, right? But just the idea of stopping the phone service for especially vulnerable customers,
right,
makes no sense.
Because and that's
the channel is so sticky, the data is so
exactly
that you're just you might as well not try, right? Or you should really deploy a voice agent. So, we don't think Elon is part of, our audience just yet, but, if someone listening can get to him, we've been trying to, I think we can do a lot. Provide better service in certain places while, rationalizing costs, but not everywhere. And it definitely can't operate as a, stopgap measure of there will be no phone. I would recommend that you deploy a voice agent with no human handoff, right? Maybe you can make the handoff more difficult and more nuanced so that you help people in places where they really need help. But that's an evolution. That's a journey mapping exercise that won't be done overnight. But they should start right now.
Yeah, and chances are they are. I mean, you never hear about good experiences over the phone with whether local municipal entities like the RMV, DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, the Internal Revenue Service. I know that I personally have had experiences calling up and spending literally 3 hours, of which 80% of that time was on hold, trying to communicate. And that's the only channel for a long time. There was no email, there was no digital self-service, nothing like that. Social Security, and you touched on this, particularly interesting because of such a vulnerable audience. We're talking about people who are in a certain age group, for the most part, that are benefiting from Social Security and the administration itself. It seems like it was a real ass backwards move to go after the phone channel there. Is it just because the phone channel operationally looks clustered, inefficient, and ideally like stands out as a beacon of change?
Listen, it's really expensive to man the phone for something of that scale. It really is. Right? Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that always somehow inevitably happens with government is, people in government and in these roles try to do the best job they can. Right?
Sure.
But the famous example is Singapore, where, I don't know what the prime minister is paid, or president, they paid a lot of money. Some multiple of like the US president, who's $400,000 a year. Right?
Yeah.
So, because the best people who know how to manage and run these things make such an operational difference to a company that they cost a lot of money. That's just market. That's capitalism, right? So I think in government, because there are like such stringent limits and trying to do things cheaply, efficiently, like when the system swells up, it actually becomes really difficult to optimize without the right expertise, right?
Right.
So you end up probably with a heavily under optimized contact center operation, right? Is labor in the right places. Often they have trying to do right by the countries trying to keep these things onshore, right? So in the case of America, that means that you're hiring a lot of people in one of the most expensive countries in the world, right? That makes sense. That's fine, right? Like that's an active decision, but then like, are you staffing the right way? Are you like optimizing the shifts and stuff? So I think it's very likely that even if you didn't do AI, you could probably bring in like customer journey mapping experts to really optimize that operation. Even that probably wasn't done. So I think if they brought in someone like that to look at that operation, it was so bad, I can totally see an Elon going like, let's like remove it and build it back if we have to from the grounds up. And that may be a valid approach, right? Because sometimes changing a very old system with like old technology, old processes, with set in its ways can be really difficult. So,
do you think that somebody who historically is, a capitalist who's leading a department, a newly formed department on government efficiency, is really concerned about things like the customer journey, or really concerned about, even the nature of constituent services in general? It seems like for again, the capitalist at heart, it seems like there's a bit of and not for his particular businesses, but just in principle, there's a conflict of interest there.
What do you mean? We flipped the roles. I'm supposed to be the communist guy.
I like role play, Nikola. What can I say?
Sorry. But look, I think that like journey mappings, conversion funnels, UX experience and stuff like that are close to any product guy's mind. And that is what Elon is fundamentally, right? So I think if they got enough of his time to optimize it, he'd get interested, I'm sure, right? Because there's also money to be saved and the experience improved. It can be a win-win-win all over, right? It just needs forceful change, right? And that way you're committing to do it. It doesn't have to be, we fired people. It's bombastic. People like saying it. It's loud. I'm not going to go into like the political climate and what different sides in America want to hear, but it can be really like they could do a lot more with like subtle changes, but that's not going to get the headlines. And maybe they did and it never got picked up. And then when they do this, it gets picked up.
Well, it's important because, again, going back to the fact that a toll-free number, especially when it comes to access to constituent services in the government, is sort of the standard and always has been. It's the primary channel. As I mentioned earlier, the IRS has no other means to get in touch with them. So why, what was the mindset? And obviously this is all speculation, right? But why would the mindset go to, hey, this is the most popular intuitive channel for a vulnerable audience. Let's get rid of it and see who complains. What did they think would happen?
Well, I mean, I think the new people will complain. I think the extent of it and the operational downstream implications are what probably got them to back off, right?
Yeah.
I think, I mean, it never really pans out. You have phenomenal examples of countries with like digitalized government. The UK, like gov.uk, is a spectacular piece of digital transformation. It's basically citizen services for everything. Most things can be done online. It's very clear, very well optimized. We can use gov.uk to create like a voice agent that's going to do most of these things the way that a human would, right?
Yeah.
And then, it's like considerations of cost. They have a budget, right? So we can probably make the experience better just by using that stuff to deal with half of the queries. And that's what they should be doing. Now, that's a lot more work than firing everyone and turning off the phone line, right? But, like one thing we always say to clients is like, look, you can get 100% containment. You just refuse to hand off to a human, right? And equally, you can solve customer contact by not offering customer contact, right?
Right.
Plantar fasciitis by chopping off your foot. You can.
Yeah.
Might change some other things, but hey.
A few other things, right? The impact there. Tell me, how long has the citizen services, and what was the name of the program in the UK?
Oh, it's just gov.uk, the website, if you got it.
Okay. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Gov.uk. So obviously a lot of digital transformation that's happening there, but it wasn't by blunt force trauma. This has been a long-standing initiative in place.
Yeah, of course. And, I think that many countries in Europe that followed up. I know that like Serbia has done a lot of similar stuff to create like, the online digital services and, like just seamlessly I started getting emails of like, yearly taxes to pay for like property and stuff. And I was like, wow, okay, cool. Right. So it's happening. Right. And, adoption is lower because, you gradually get people to do something because they might prefer to do it over email or over this or that. Now, if you have hard budgetary constraints, maybe you can be a bit more forceful about where you push. But I think for social services, for healthcare, voice is king. It's going to stay king, right? It won't change. We have enough data and consumer preferences. The recent thing, the survey we did where we see that Gen Z actually like is drawn to voice much more so than millennials or Gen X are. Like that's a data point that, well, you can argue it, you can rerun the survey. We're fairly confident we've done like a really thorough job. Like Gen Z likes voice more. So it's not going away. So you start, you roll up your sleeves and you're like, okay, let's go and build like a digital channel in voice, right?
Yeah.
Automation. That's why you should do it, right? It won't come overnight. Adoption won't be overnight. It'll take people time to adjust, especially in the US. There's been so much of that first generation nuance IVR that makes people pull their hair out. That people, if you want complaints, you're going to get a lot of complaints just from that, right? It's not going to be popular that you introduced it, but like that's how you strike a middle ground between balancing a budget and offering a service. You have to offer the service, right?
Right. And a lot of times, especially when it comes to UK, federal government agencies, they're operating on the most legacy of those legacy IVRs, if there's automation at all. So, the doom loops are more common and more frequent. The ability to actually route to the right department or individual is often decayed because it hasn't been touched in 30 years. Because to your point as well, the staffing crisis that has always existed on those like frontiers, the number of agents that are able to handle anything. It kind of like goes the way of the dodo. By the way, the interesting thing about that Gen Z piece is that, and this is to assuage any parents out there that are like, I'm going to wave this factoid in front of my kids who never call me. It's strictly tied to when they need a service or support issue. They prefer the phone as the channel. So they still don't like to call anybody, just to call and chat.
Hold on. I remember being like, a kid and a gamer, right? And I remember when we started using like Ventrilo and TeamSpeak, and at that point that wasn't very common. Today people are streaming and talking non-stop, right?
That's true.
Well, they don't like to call their parents,
right?
I don't know that was different for our generation, for older generations either, right? Like, so that whole like meme there is like probably nothing. It's just run rate. They call each other and they send each other asynchronous voice. a lot more as well. So, and they spend.
That's true. There is a boost in like social use of voice memos where instead of sending text, you just drop a voice memo. That's very true.
That's one thing. And the other thing is, think of like gaming platforms and everything. Now it's like pretty much run rate, and in every game, you're speaking to people nonstop. You just have the voice channel. Previously, you had chat, and you were like, have a chat screen going on, and that's how you do that interaction. Today, it's mostly speaking, right? So again, people like to communicate.
That is interesting. So maybe phone is sort of wavering with regards to utilization, but voice will always be king as long as there are voice channels.
Companies like the government that we're talking about, right,
yeah,
have done so much work to make problems go away so that people call less.
Yeah.
That's a never-ending effort by every organization. So yeah, people call less. They also send less chat requests. Now, if you forcibly push them to chat, right, you'll see a bit more chat and a bit less voice. But the total contact for most enterprises that we work with that are good at customer journey mapping and finding root causes of why people call,
right,
year on year, especially for stable products that have been the same for many years, the contact volume across all channels decreases. So when we say that we might see wavering voice usage, that's a good thing, because even a voice AI call costs you something. And if your product came with a sticker that prevented you from calling because it told you how to do something, well, that's just a good thing, and it's a better user experience, right? So I think that a lot of those surveys and questions are how you ask the question and how you consider all the latent factors, right? And yeah.
Very true. All right. Fair enough then. We only have about a minute left. So real quick, Elon calls us back, right? Says, hey, all right, tell me how I should approach the inefficiencies here for this particular agency. And we want to use voice automation as part of that solution. What is the 30-second roadmap that we present to Elon when it comes to this is what you're going to want to do, inclusive of organizational redesign or preservation?
Well, I mean, they should just start with the departments where they're struggling the most, right? Where are the long waiting times? Is it the IRS? Is it social services?
Right.
Medicare, Medicaid, all those things. Let's go and figure out where the biggest problems are, where we can automate 30, 50, 70%. We'll give them a roadmap for each of those. We have it for each of those.
Mm-hmm.
And let's go. Let's do some work, right? It can be done quickly. But, it's going to take some work, right? And in the end, it's going to save a hell of a lot of money and make the whole system better. Because in answering the questions you need to provide a conclusive answer, you're going to find out that you're probably giving wrong answers by humans all along, right? That many things are out of date and stuff. And as you create this new channel and interface, you're going to redevelop your service to be even better, right?
Yeah.
So it won't be done overnight. Can't be done with one announcement. But can be done relatively quickly,
Right.
By the end of this administration, they could have a very different, digitally enabled America. They should take it seriously. They have a big opportunity.
So grab a scalpel, put away that chainsaw, please.
Yeah. Or just calls. Do all the work.
Sounds great. Good last second pitch there. Nikola, a pleasure as always. I hope your cough gets a little bit better, and I look forward to chatting with you next week.
Absolutely. Have a great week.
Take care.
See you there.